Please like and subscribe and comment below where are you watching from. In a busy marketplace, a young woman looked at her phone, showing an image of a young man dressed in plain white cotton clothes. She frowned, wondering why anyone would wear such outdated clothing. Her grandmother, standing beside her, smiled and asked if she disliked him. The young woman expressed her frustration, criticizing his appearance. However, her grandmother's expression turned serious. With a single tap of her staff, the stone pavement beneath her cracked, sending fear through nearby vendors. She reminded her granddaughter that appearances can be deceiving and revealed a shocking truth. 3 years ago, when 800,000 soldiers gathered at the border, they were forced to retreat because of this very man. His presence alone was enough to make enemies flee. He was the legendary figure who had once stood at the northern borders, known for his unmatched strength. Meanwhile, far away on a massive passenger ship, a young man dressed in simple white clothes sat near the door, his eyes sharp and observant. Nearby, an elderly man, his face scarred by fire, struggled with thirst. The young man kindly offered him tea, sensing the old man's suffering was not just physical but a deep trauma from the past. The old man revealed that he had been a firefighter, surviving a massive fire that had consumed his entire squad. Despite his severe injuries, he had lived, though the memories haunted him. As the young man listened intently, he got up to get more water. When he returned, the old man was standing near the public water dispenser, but a large man in a black suit stood behind him, impatiently urging him to move. The protagonist remained calm as the bodyguard's fist approached. With a simple movement, he sent the towering man flying across the corridor, leaving Ian frozen in terror. Unable to comprehend such overwhelming strength, Ian stammered, questioning the protagonist's identity. Ignoring him, the protagonist helped an old man to his feet, his voice gentle yet firm. He reminded Ian that this man, though now humiliated, had once stood with great honor. Ian scoffed, refusing to acknowledge the old man's past. His arrogance was boundless, believing his family's influence shielded him from consequences. But the protagonist was unmoved. He recalled his past, where he had once defended the borders alone, instilling fear in his enemies. His voice turned cold as he declared that those who trampled on the honorable should be punished. A single strike sent Ian crashing to the floor, defeated. Despite his loss, Ian seethed with hatred, vowing revenge as the ship neared the dock. Waiting onshore was an elderly butler accompanied by 50 well-trained bodyguards, their presence exuding menace. Ian's family held power in Preston, and they would not let this humiliation go unanswered. As Ian disembarked, the butler rushed forward, ready to enact their retribution. The protagonist turned and left after making a firm statement, causing over 1,000 warriors to silently withdraw their weapons and follow him. As they walked away, a trusted subordinate pleaded with him to return to their homeland, assuring him that once he was back, no harm would come to him. The protagonist only smiled, unfazed by the warning. He had returned with a single purpose: to eliminate 3 people. His words left the subordinate speechless, knowing that nothing could change his decision. As they left the docks, a convoy of luxurious black cars awaited them. Nearby, an elderly woman with silver hair stood with a young woman, her elegant presence commanding respect. The young woman, dressed in stylish sportswear, displayed impatience, complaining about waiting too long for someone she had never met. However, her grandmother silenced her with a stern warning. Moments later, the protagonist arrived, escorted by 1,000 men in black attire. The sight was awe-inspiring, making the young woman curious about his true identity. Before they could step forward, an imposing figure appeared, his presence radiating authority. He confronted the protagonist's subordinate, accusing him of overstepping his boundaries. The tense exchange between these two powerful figures drew attention, with onlookers feeling the weight of their confrontation. The elderly woman, recognizing both men as formidable forces in the land, whispered their names in awe. She understood the sheer power they wielded, strong enough to erase entire families with a single command. Meanwhile, the protagonist remained composed, his gaze calm yet unreadable. The protagonist felt a deep sense of warmth as the old woman tearfully touched his face, showing how much she had missed him. She was the only family he truly respected, and her kindness toward him would never be forgotten. If anyone dared to disrespect her, the protagonist would make sure they regretted it. Meanwhile, 2 men conversed in hushed voices before the protagonist instructed one to return to his duties while the other accompanied him. His return was for a personal matter, and the black convoy soon headed toward the grand estate of a powerful family. During the journey, the old woman reminisced about the past, expressing how much time had passed since she last saw him. The protagonist acknowledged her past sacrifices that had saved his life. As they spoke, she introduced a young woman who greeted him politely. However, when the protagonist casually mentioned that she could break their engagement if she wished, her excitement was immediately crushed by the old woman's anger. She firmly declared that the engagement, arranged long ago, would not be broken. The young woman protested, arguing that arranged marriages were outdated and that she had been mocked by her peers. However, the old woman was unyielding. Only her death would change the arrangement. Frustrated, the young woman turned to the protagonist, questioning whether he knew the two men traveling with him. His response stunned her. Not only did he know them, but one of them used to handle his weapon. The revelation left her speechless, realizing that these highly respected figures were nothing more than followers to the protagonist. As the convoy stopped, she tried to learn more, but he remained silent, stepping out to support the old woman. The old woman, smiling warmly, reassured her that everything would become clear in time. The protagonist then declared that anyone important to her would be under his protection forever. The protagonist stood calmly as the tension in the Sage family grew. He had just returned to his hometown, yet he was met with hostility. The older woman of the Sage family, recognizing his value, insisted that he stay in their home. She even suggested that he and the young woman of the family share a living space. This embarrassed the young woman, who had barely known the protagonist since childhood. She wasn't willing to accept him as her husband, and her family's younger members supported her resistance. Sensing her discomfort, the protagonist suggested they cancel the engagement. He reassured her that he would protect her regardless and treat her as a sister. However, breaking off the engagement in such a manner could harm her reputation. To resolve this, he offered to sign an annulment document himself. This decision angered his ally, who saw it as an insult. He warned the Sage family of the consequences, declaring that breaking the engagement would provoke powerful forces. The Sage family's younger generation, unwilling to back down, challenged this authority. But they were soon faced with overwhelming power. One by one, powerful figures arrived, men whose presence alone commanded fear. Their arrival sent a clear message: the protagonist was not to be disrespected. The protagonist calmly reassured the elderly woman before turning his attention to the unfolding situation. The arrogant young men of the Sage family needed to understand that some people were beyond their reach. Taking advantage of this moment, the protagonist sought to uncover the challenges facing the Sage family, intending to assist them if necessary. Meanwhile, a high-ranking officer activated his advanced communication device, projecting a live feed from the headquarters. 70 personnel stood at attention as he issued an A1 alert, an order that placed all forces on high alert while keeping the public unaware. A young woman in the control center hesitated, alarmed by the severity of the command. However, her concerns were swiftly dismissed when multiple powerful figures, including legendary commanders, appeared on the scene. The presence of these influential leaders shocked the woman, especially when she noticed an unassuming young man standing among them. Despite his plain appearance, even the most formidable commander seemed to hold him in high regard. When the protagonist spoke, the commanders immediately obeyed, canceling the high-level alert without hesitation. His authority was unquestionable, leaving the woman and many others speechless. The officer leading the operation, sensing the growing uncertainty among his subordinates, reminded them of the consequences of hesitation. The entire unit was left in awe, wondering who this mysterious young man truly was. The streets of Dragon City were filled with people who appeared ordinary but carried swords at their waists, each marked with a unique symbol. These weapons were far more difficult to forge than rifles, indicating the elite nature of their owners. Meanwhile, in the Sage family's courtyard, the atmosphere was tense. The protagonist remained calm as others mocked him, treating his presence as insignificant. A young man from the Sage family scoffed, claiming he could easily hire actors for a small price, dismissing the protagonist's strength as a mere bluff. However, the situation shifted when their phones lost signal. The group, initially dismissing the incident as a coincidence, soon realized the protagonist had enforced an A1 order. This meant that all 72 areas were sealed under his command, shocking everyone. It became clear that he held a position of immense power, far beyond what they had imagined. The protagonist's identity was no longer in question. His authority surpassed anything the Sage family had anticipated. As realization dawned, fear took hold. A powerful young man arrived at the Sage family's gate, his presence radiating strength, but he was stopped. The protagonist's forces stood firm, preventing any interference, marking his dominance over the city. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a deep red glow as a man stood by the window, lost in thought. He had just received shocking news. Someone he once knew had returned. 13 years ago, a young boy had barely survived a tragic accident, protected only by a powerful family. Sent away to safety, no one expected him to return, let alone with immense strength. Now, his presence alone could shake the entire city. A knock on the door broke his thoughts. A younger man entered, frustrated that he had been called away from a brewing fight. However, the older man scolded him for his ignorance. The people he had seen weren't ordinary. They were elite warriors, marked by their insignia. They belonged to a feared group, and offending them could lead to severe consequences. Elsewhere, tensions rose as various figures gathered. Among them was a man of high authority, who commanded deep respect. When his name was spoken, even the boldest among them felt uneasy. More powerful figures arrived, making it clear that something major was happening. The air grew tense, but before things could escalate further, a young woman's voice cut through the crowd, irritated by the scene unfolding before her. The protagonist stepped forward, gently holding the woman's hand, making her flustered and embarrassed. He teased her about their childhood, recalling how she once followed him, calling him brother. Ignoring her protests, he led her away, instructing his men to teach the Sage family a lesson but not to harm them, as he owed them a great debt. The commanders, recognizing the weight of his words, immediately obeyed. Once the protagonist left, the four commanders revealed their true might. Among them, one man, known for his terrifying reputation, let out a chilling presence. Drawing his saber, he released a powerful force, cutting an 8-meter-tall artificial mountain in half with a single strike. The Sage family members trembled in fear, realizing they had provoked a force beyond their comprehension. Another warrior, wielding a sword, unleashed a breathtaking attack, slicing the broken mountain into 72 equal pieces. His overwhelming strength left even his allies in shock. The frightened Sage family could barely comprehend what they had witnessed. One of them, trembling, questioned whether these men were even human. A commander coldly responded that their duty was to keep powerful individuals like themselves in check. With their warning delivered, the warriors departed, leaving the Sage family shaken. Meanwhile, the protagonist arrived at a peaceful villa where an elder warmly welcomed him, declaring that he would now live there. The woman protested, insisting it was her home, but the elder's decision was final, leaving her helpless. The protagonist sat quietly in the classroom, his eyes filled with deep emotions as he watched the woman on the teaching platform. It had been 13 years since he last saw her, and the sight of her in a wheelchair broke his heart. He listened attentively, not missing a single word, overwhelmed by memories. If he had known she was still alive, he would have returned long ago. Meanwhile, in the last row, a group of students mocked the teacher without any respect. They called her insulting names and laughed loudly, disrupting the class. Their laughter echoed in the room, but no one seemed to care. It was a common sight. Their words enraged the protagonist. He could tolerate anything, but insulting her was unforgivable. Without hesitation, he moved. His speed was unmatched, and before anyone could react, he grabbed the arrogant young man by the neck and slammed him onto the table. The impact was so powerful that the table shattered and the young man collapsed, groaning in pain. His body trembled as he coughed up blood, his strength fading. The others froze in shock, unable to believe what had just happened. The girl in the group screamed in terror, calling for help. But the protagonist remained calm, his actions needed no justification. They had insulted someone precious to him, and that was enough reason to act. The protagonist's name triggered a high-level security alert in the internal system, shocking the investigator. His file was classified as SSS level with most of his details hidden. Realizing the significance of this, the investigator immediately informed his superior, who seemed to understand the weight of the situation. He recalled the painful past of the protagonist, a tragic event from 13 years ago that could not be forgotten. Meanwhile, at Preston University, the protagonist was by his mother's side, pushing her wheelchair beneath a maple tree. He noticed how much she had aged and promised to help her stand again. Though she didn't care about walking anymore, seeing her son was enough for her. Nearby, a school worker silently endured the taunts of students. Despite his once prestigious background, he had spent years in a lowly job, suffering daily humiliation. One student cruelly reminded him of how he had begged to keep his job. The man remained silent, accustomed to such treatment. As he swept the fallen leaves, he unknowingly approached the protagonist and his mother. When he finally looked up, he was stunned. The protagonist, seeing his father after so many years, felt a deep surge of emotion. He was feared by many, yet at this moment, he was just a son, longing for his family. The protagonist moved swiftly, grabbing the frightened student by the collar and throwing him to the ground with a powerful force. The impact shattered the pavement and the student coughed up blood, his body trembling in fear. The protagonist's voice was calm yet filled with authority as he questioned why his father had been insulted when he had done no wrong. A deep rage flickered within him, but before it could fully erupt, a woman's voice stopped him, reminding him not to act out in violence. Turning to his father, the protagonist asked about a man named Vice Principal Lang, but his father dismissed it, not wanting to dig up old matters. However, the protagonist was unwilling to let the insult slide. He declared that disrespect toward his father was the same as disrespect toward him. At his words, an elite warrior nearby immediately gave the order to find the man. Within minutes, a well-dressed middle-aged man was brought before them. He was the vice principal of a prestigious university, confident in his status and connections. However, his arrogance meant nothing in front of the protagonist. Simon Lang, the vice principal, angrily threatened to call security, but he underestimated the situation. When guards rushed in to remove the protagonist, they were met with an overwhelming sight: 1,000 warriors standing in formation, swords drawn, ready to strike at a single command. The security guards, realizing the danger, froze in terror. The leader of the guards, now shaking with fear, could barely form words as he grasped the reality of who stood before him. The protagonist stood beside his father, declaring their relationship, shocking the man before them. The realization hit him hard. He finally understood why he had been assigned to watch over the protagonist's father all these years. The protagonist's cold gaze made it clear that he was fully aware of the past, including the struggles his parents had endured. His father had been forced into a humiliating life as a school cleaner, all because of the powerful family's suppression. Seeing through everything, the protagonist didn't ask about the past in front of his father, knowing it would only deepen his wounds. Instead, he simply agreed when his father suggested going home. The man watching them sighed in relief, thinking he had avoided punishment. But before he could relax, the protagonist unleashed an overwhelming force. A terrifying pressure filled the air, making even the trees bend. Thousands of warriors in black robes immediately knelt, acknowledging the might of the young man before them. The protagonist's voice rang like thunder, commanding the man to kneel. The force was so immense that he collapsed instantly, his knee shattering upon impact. Screams of agony filled the air, but the protagonist remained unmoved. He didn't need to lift a finger, his presence alone had delivered the punishment. With a final warning to remain kneeling for 10 days, he left, pushing his father's wheelchair. His family of 3 then made their way to the old slums of Preston, where their journey continued. A young man approached with an aura of dominance, his white hair flowing like snow in the wind. This was the powerful and unpredictable commander of Eastern Hansworth, a man feared by many. He carried a black scabbard on his back, containing a legendary battle sword, a weapon so powerful that no one dared to underestimate it. The mere sight of it made those around him serious, knowing that if unsheathed, no one could stop its force. With a carefree attitude, he casually asked to borrow the sword, causing discomfort among the others. They knew that if he wielded it, even the strongest among them would struggle to defend against his attacks. His unpredictable nature made him a headache for even the highest-ranking figures, as he never followed conventional rules. Despite the tension, he remained relaxed, jokingly provoking a serious man about his family's ancestral history, instantly igniting anger. However, his main concern was why the protagonist had returned so quiet. With his knowledge of past events, he understood that such silence was unnatural. When warned not to stir trouble, he dismissed their concerns, making everyone uneasy. His reckless past was well known. Years ago, he had mistakenly crossed a national border, nearly causing an international conflict. The opposing nation, thinking war was imminent, sent 50,000 soldiers after him. Trapped in enemy territory, he barely survived. In response, the protagonist single-handedly took down 30,000 enemies to rescue him, proving his unmatched strength. Since then, he had remained by the protagonist's side, not just as a fighter, but as someone truly loyal to him. The protagonist's gaze turned cold as tension filled the air. A man attempted to act arrogantly, but before he could react, the protagonist struck him hard, sending him flying. The man was stunned, unable to believe what had happened. Furious, he shouted, claiming that even the heavens would not forgive this. His pride was shattered as his expensive golden teeth were knocked out. The protagonist remained calm, his hand gripping a black saber as he pointed it at the trembling man. Fear crept into the man's heart. How could someone so young be this ruthless? An elder stepped forward, trying to defuse the situation, urging the protagonist not to act recklessly. Another person, speaking with a knowing smile, reassured the elder that even if the man and his entire family were removed, it wouldn't be worth the protagonist's trouble. A woman intervened, gently asking the protagonist to avoid unnecessary fights in the future. With a warm smile, he agreed and returned the saber to its sheath. She made him promise not to use weapons unless someone bullied them first. He gave his word, though those around him knew that few in this world were worthy opponents. As the moment passed, a convoy of black cars arrived in an imposing display of power. The protagonist's guardian instinctively pulled him aside, sensing the arrival of an important figure. An elder admired the luxury vehicles, while others remained indifferent. The first car's door opened, revealing a respected figure, who respectfully addressed the protagonist. It was clear they had come for him,